All right, now we're going to look at changing a fraction or decimal to a percent. Now, compared to the last video, realize that this is going in the opposite direction. Before, we were converting percentages to decimal. So now, and also, I think we also had a fraction in one of the examples. But so we're going in the opposite direction. So you'll notice that we're just going to do everything in reverse for the most part. So you'll notice if you compare the steps in the previous video to the steps in this video, you'll notice that it's just kind of doing the opposite. So we're doing a reverse procedure. Okay, so step one, if the number is a fraction or a mixed number, convert it to a decimal equivalent. So step one is just telling you to convert a fraction to a decimal, which we should know how to do already. And then after that, you just take the decimal and convert it to a percentage, which will be done on step 2 and 3. So so as you can see, example E and F have fractions, and example G and H will have decimals. So step 1 will only be applied to E and F since they're in fraction form. Okay, so let's look at example E. We're going to convert this fraction into a decimal. So 4/5 is equal to 0.8. If you have any concerns about this, you may want to look back at the procedure of how to convert a fraction to a decimal, but we're not going to go over this too much. But you'll be able to see that this converts to 0.8 in decimal form. So that's step 1, and then we want to move the decimal place 2 places to the right. Before, in the last video, we were moving it 2 places to the left. Remember, we're doing the reverse procedure, so we're going to be doing the opposite. So we're going to be moving this decimal over 2 places. So notice that that we have a placeholder here that we're skipping that's blank. So similar to the last procedure in the previous video, wherever we jump over a blank spot, we're going to insert a 0. So this becomes 80. There we go. And the decimal's now where that arrow's ending. And so notice that insert zeros if needed. So as you can see, we needed to insert a 0. Write a percentage symbol at the right end of the new number. So notice that this decimal isn't really doing anything. It's just the number 80. So this becomes 80%. And we're done. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Notice that I did not put equal right here. I did not put an equal sign right here. Because we know that 0.8, what we have right here, is not actually equal to 80. So that's why I'm using an arrow. And you'll notice that in the previous video, you'll notice that they're not actually equivalent. It's just applying a step in this procedure up here. So make sure you're using equivalent signs appropriately. Hopefully that makes sense. Only put an equal sign if they're actually equal to each other. It's not really that big a deal in this class, but it's just something to point out. All right, so moving on, we have 1 3/8. So we're going to convert this into decimal form. And we know, we should know from converting a fraction into a decimal, or converting 3/8 into a decimal form, 3/8 is equivalent to 0.375. I'm not going to go into that too much, just because this video will just be too long. But go ahead and review that if you where we convert fractions into decimals as needed. But this is equal to 1.375. Okay, so now that's step 1. You converted the fraction to decimal. And then now we're in step 2. We're going to move this decimal over 2 places. Notice we didn't move over a blank this time. So we don't have to insert any zeros. So this becomes, using an arrow again, 137. Now the arrow is pointing between the 7 and 5, so we want the decimal there. And now, step 3, write a percentage symbol at the right end of the new number. So this is 137.5%. All right, moving on. Example G and H, as mentioned before, we can skip step 1 because there's no fractions involved. So we can move directly to into step 2. So I'm going to write down 0.4. Actually, let's use a different color here. Use green. 0.4, and we're going to move that decimal over 2 places. So we skipped over a blank here, so we need to put a decimal or a 0 in there. And then this becomes 40. So the decimal would be there, similar to example E. That decimals, we're not really doing anything. So you can just say that this is equal to 40. And then we do step 3, which is insert the percentage symbol. And we're done. Okay, so we're on the last step here. And we have 1.1875, and we want to move that decimal over 2 places. There's no fraction, so we can skip that first step again. Okay, so this becomes 118, and that decimal is in between the 8 and 7. And then actually at this point, we don't have to well, yeah, let's just do it to show it another step. 118.75. And put the percentage symbol in there. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. Let me know if you have any concerns, and I'll be more than happy to help.